In this second video, we will look at the built-in measuring tools that come in Bluebeam. Let's get a drawing into the workspace so we can see what the tools do. As I said in the previous video, you will have all you need here in terms of measuring, but at the moment these tools are pretty generic. Alright, we have our drawing open. Make sure you are in the tool chest pane. We can now see the tools. Before we do anything in the workspace, we will need to calibrate the drawing we've just imported. From the measure tab at the top, there's a calibrate icon, if you can see it up there. Click on the calibrate icon. A dialog pops up asking you to draw a line between 2 points. So pick a dimension from the drawing and do just that. I'll dismiss that, zoom in. I'm going to go for this 1.565, 1565. When you clicked and completed the calibration line, another dialog pops up and asks you for the dimension you just calibrated to be input. I used 1565 from the drawing, so I need to input that here, 1.565. I've gone for 1.565 because it's in meters. I want to work in meters. I also want to store the scale in this page. So basically I'm telling this software that this page is that scale. Save, OK. Now, did you notice when I was calibrating there, I'll do it again just to show you. As I got near to the point I wanted to click the cursor, the crosshairs turned into a red box and seemed to grab at the point I wanted to click. Same as at the termination point there. It grabbed onto it. My dialog window pops up off screen because I've got the second screen going. But we just repeated the same exercise, so nothing's changed. And the reason those cursors turn like that and snap to the point is because we enabled the snap to down at the bottom. In other words, it just makes the software aware that it's giving it the sort of permission to intelligently guess of where you're intending to click the cursor. This is known as snap to. Now we've calibrated this, you may also notice over here on the right pane that by default the store scale in page option has also been ticked, and in this scale dialog you can see that 3.1327 centimeters is equal to 1.565 meters. That's basically the 3.13 is what I physically measured on the screen, and I told it that it was in the real world on this drawing is equal to 1.565 meters. So just to check that we've calibrated correctly, grab the length tool, find another dimension. Let's go for this 1350. Notice it's intelligently trying to grab the node, and you can see that it was calibrated successfully because that 1.35 matches the 1350 on the screen. So we know this is set. Bear in mind you will need to do this on every drawing you subsequently open. It will just become second nature. And just also be mindful that some drawings do have a mixtures of scales on them. In that scenario, don't click store scale in page. Just be aware of what scale you're working in and flip back and forth between the two. There are some do's and don'ts with that, because when you finally save you can affect the dims that you've already taken, but just be aware that that can be a problem, but we'll show you more about that later on. You can actually directly set the scale in Bluebeam if you need to. Go down to the legend over on the right, usually where it is, and we can see that this drawing is 1 to 50. If we undo what we did in calibrating, because this is 1 to 50, we need to input in here 1 centimetre is equal to half a metre. So in the real world, that gives you 1 to 50. If you'd put 1 centimetre is equal to 1 metre, that would be 1 to 100, and 1 centimetre to 2 metres, 1 to 200, and so on. You can Google these ratios quite readily, and you can use that to input there. So the final thing you need to do is store the scale in the page, and just being prudent, go back in, double check what you've done, make sure it's correct, and there we've got 5.05, which is pretty much bang on. You may have noticed that as we click that last length, that dim appeared in the spreadsheet type window at the bottom in the lower. So if I go down and click on that length measurement, you notice it highlights in blue in the spreadsheet area, and similarly on the screen it's also highlighted itself with these little yellow nodes. These are known as control points. That works the other way around as well. Change your cursor here, click outside, click on the dimension. Again, it will highlight both synchronized. That's what the sync button's for down there. This is very handy to know what you're working on and where you're working on both screens. So it's obvious what the length tool does, but before we move on to the next tool, over here on the right pane, if you click on the little cog, you'll see as a dialog pops up, and that's what gives the length tool its style and properties. That's why it's a red line, that's why the length is shown, and the style of arrow and the font it uses, etc, etc. This is where we will come when we want to create our own tools. Notice that the tool is named in the subject length measurement. Over here it's known as length measurement in the subject. Down here under the subject is known as length measurement. Over here in the toolbox it's known as length measurement. These all correlate so we know what we're working with. As I said, these are just default and basic generic tools that come with Bluebeam. Don't change these ones that are shipped with Bluebeam, because all you'll do is overwrite them. They just won't behave the way you think. If we want to create our own tools, we need to duplicate these and then edit those using this dialog. But we'll do that a little bit further down the line. Now let's look at the area tool next. Click on area. Let's go for 1/2 of the floor in this plot. Same thing as the length. Click the tool, go to the screen, start to measure the area you want to know the area of. So I'm going around the inside of this. Double click the final one and it's highlighted in. Again, you can see it's appeared in the spreadsheet window at the bottom as an area. And when we create our own custom tools, these labels that you see here and dims around the outside and the bounding boxes can clutter the screen. So it's really handy to be able to turn all these off. You notice the captions disappeared there because I unchecked the box. But more on that later. Same thing for count, really. Let's try a count. Just imagine there's a fire sock there and there we want to record. 2 ticks. And if you notice with count, it doesn't know I've stopped counting yet. And the way you let it know you stopped counting is click outside the window, go on to another task or click another tool, then it appears. There are a few subtleties between the tools that you'll become aware of once we start to measure properly. Now just going back to the area tool, you may have noticed that as I was going round that girth, I deliberately went wrong here. So if I click the shape, the bounding box is highlighted and the node points appear. Because I've gone a little bit wonky, what I can do is I can right click, add a control point, drag it over there and correct it. And you can see the area's updated itself as well. Quite handy tool. Going back to poly length, let's get rid of area and stuff like that. Poly length is basically the same as perimeter. It's exactly the same. The reason it appears twice in Review Extreme is because in Review Extreme it has extended capabilities. Poly length doesn't appear in standard, only appears in Extreme. I think it's going to be deprecated in perimeter is going to be deprecated in Extreme eventually, but because of the way the software is distributed, they remain in Extreme. And what I'm about to show you here doesn't quite work in standard yet. It's not to say it won't be brought in a future version. So I want to know the girth of the building. So let's go ahead and girth it. Clicking on the nodes as we go. And another way of correcting a mistake, say I click there and I should have clicked down there. What do I do? Well, press Control and Z on the keyboard and the last click you did becomes undone and lets you to start again. So we can go right from where we went wonky and carry on. So let's get right the way around, get our girth. All the way around. Sometimes you can zoom too fast and get ahead of the screen scrolling and your measurement will just disappear and you'll have to start again. So just be mindful not to rush it too hard. But you will get used to it, it becomes second nature. Final click and the bounding box appears right the way around. Let me just pick that and just make that a bit thicker so you can see it on screen easier. So that's your poly length, perimeter, girth. Once we've created our own tool, we can make a tool called girth that takes the place of this. As you can see here, this poly length just gives me one output, one total length. One improvement in 2017 that's been introduced is the ability to select that, highlight it, you can see the node points have appeared and the bounding box is there, right click it, and there is now an option to split it all. So what that effectively does is it splits each segment, each length between each node down into a separate dim. This is really handy, for instance, if you've got the scenario where you've got 600mm depth on this side, 300mm depth on this side. In the spreadsheet you can input different depths, so on. That will affect the final output. Don't worry too much about that now, it'll all become clear when we start measuring. So that gives you an overview of how the tools are used. In the next one, I'll show you how to create custom tools for your own specific use and how to arrange and manage those tools. See you in video 3.